Blake Shoemaker, what's happening, my friend? It's a big day in Titans world.
Yes, sir. We got through the NFL draft, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about as far as players, strategies, what happened, what didn't happen. I just cannot wait.
I know, man. After all of the draft process, it's just like a vacation. It's already over. We got all these new toys. This was pretty controversial draft-wise. I really felt like, there's a lot of people in the middle ground. There's a lot of people on both sides that didn't like it. Some people really liked it. Some people liked the gamble. Some did not. A little bit of controversy everywhere. I was pleasantly surprised because, it's good content. Let's call it what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't all good. It wasn't all bad. And I'm interested after we kind of run down the players, what your overall grade is, because it's very polarizing. You've got people who loved it. You've got people who hated it. And, everybody seems to be all over the map. But I think we've got plenty to discuss.
We sure do.
No lack of content this week.
Zero lack of content. I mean, of course, all the big news on Richard, and yeah, tough go on the front office look. Well, I know we're going to get into that here in a little bit on whether we trust this Titans front office or not. Are we sure this is the right way going forward? Because it seems like character flaws are all over the place for them. And it seems like the front office keeps missing some. So we'll see how that goes. We'll get everybody's opinion on that. So hang tight with us. We got a big broadcast today. Like, subscribe, comment, share this out to your friends because we want everybody to come in and talk to us. We want to come hang. This is your show also. But also today's sponsor is our great friends over at Parkway Poorhouse, baby. Our Titans watch parties, come out, hang out. If you are in Chattanooga or in the Titans area, if you're in the Chattanooga area, come hang out with all your Titans peeps, Braves peeps, whatever. It's one of the best sports watching bars, restaurants in town. It's down by the water. Great little neighborhood around there next to Whiskey Distillery. If you want some food that's a little down by the bayou, the Big Easy type food, they got you. Great beer selection. Always got the mixed drinks, whatever you like. Come hang out on the patio. Bring the pup. It's always a good time. Plan your visit today over at parkwaypoorhouse.com or just come hang out anytime you want to.
Really good wings too, by the way.
Ooh.
Really good wings.
Really good wings. I mean, we have a secretly good wing town here in Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. Very underrated.
Very underrated. And I don't think there's a lot of places to get enough clout. But I will say Parkway definitely doesn't, because personal opinion, and this is not even being biased as a sponsorship, my favorite wings in town, I love a good crunch, but not like Hooters crunchy all the time. I don't like the overly breaded, but this is a good one. This is the best wings in town. Personal opinion. Power rankings will be coming soon on Chat 10 Sports.
Here we go.
Here we go, baby. All right. Draft picks. Where do you want to start, buddy?
Well, I mean, let's start at number one. I mean, it doesn't take very long for us to get into our first debate as the Titans at number 22 overall go with Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. I know that the talk leading up to this has been, do they go wide receiver then cornerback, or do they go cornerback and then wide receiver? The answer is neither. They went with quarterback early, but it's not the most obvious choice because of the injury concerns. He had a back injury in 2019. He sat out the entire 2020 season due to COVID concerns, as many players did, so you can't really hold that against him. But he's had 2 back surgeries, the most recent of which have been this past March. Mm-hmm. Definitely a large degree of risk, but plenty of upside. The consensus among NFL drafts or among NFL mock drafts and NFL experts is that if he weren't injured, he would have easily gone as a top 10 pick. And our own Paul Kaharski reported that he spoke to other team scouts, and at least 3 other NFL teams had given him a clean bill of health and would have drafted him had it been their pick or had he been the fit at the time that they came up. So it becomes a matter of, does the risk, does the reward outweigh the risk? And that's what remains to be seen because the NFL players are faster, stronger, bigger. And I think we'll know. I mean, he's going to be thrown from the frying pan into the fire pretty quickly. What do you feel about the pick?
I like the gamble, and I know we even said in the beginning there's questionable as far as like character traits go in some of the draft picks, but I do think the medical evaluations are what the Titans have done very well. And primetime example is Jeffrey Simmons. So getting Simmons with I know ACL and I know back are very different, but from what it sounds like, Caleb Farley is in really good position to play for a very long time. He has so much talent. And our boy from the Great Competition Problem, our betting podcast here on Chat 10 Sports, Mike Iannello said, top 10 talent at pick 22. You cannot get enough of this guy. I mean, I think he's going to be a lockdown corner type guy. And it sounds like the Titans want to go a little bit bigger. They want to be the more press coverage. They've got a 6'2" guy with a good size, great speed. And it's one of those, you want a dynamic corner, you got one. Just have to be wary as far as the back injury goes, but it seems like they've done their homework. Multiple teams have done their homework, and the evaluations have seemed clean. So if he's healthy and he's ready to go, plus a year off, all these little bodily injuries you get from football, just kind of saves your knees, your elbow, whatever, anything you've ever had, that's kind of taken away. So it's going to be a year that we're going to get out of him that maybe you wouldn't have. So we'll see, man.
It's true. And one thing you don't have to worry about with this guy is character concerns. This guy is a class act across the board. There were stories everywhere about him, driving back from campus every single weekend to spend time with his mother, who unfortunately was lost to cancer. But the injury was kind of a blessing in disguise for him. He used that opportunity to spend more time with his mom. And I think he fits the Titans scheme really well, and that the Titans have given some smaller school players and some underrated draft picks a chance, and they've used that as the motivation to go out and up their game at that top level. So I'm excited about it.
Me too. And exactly like Trey said, it is an upgrade in Adoree'. It's slight. I mean, it's tough to say. Adoree' was kind of a freak athlete coming out of college, but athleticism, very, very, very close. But a guy that's got 4 inches longer on a reach, is 2 to 3 inches taller than he was, and about 20 pounds heavier. So same athleticism, if that, maybe better, but a lot bigger. And that's what you got to have in the NFL, because I feel like everybody that's coming out nowadays is a little bit freakier, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger. You get guys that I just can't even believe are real human beings at 19 to 21 years old.
Yeah. And honest. Joey, in the other comment, the last one there, makes a good point about the type of procedure that was. When we think back surgery, I think we think of the old school back surgery where it's super invasive. It scares the heck out of you. It's the back, it's the spine, it's that whole area. But these surgeries are minimally invasive. The downtime is not nearly as big. And there are already videos of him, from this spring, doing some full speed exercises out on the field. So that's good to see. So I think that the back injury, while it is a risk, has been kind of overplayed a little bit, in that they don't take into consideration the type of procedure we're talking about.
100%. I don't know a ton, but it does sound like a lot of people are saying the same thing, and much smarter people than I are saying the same thing. And you and some of these other guys are in or around in the medical field. So much smarter opinions and takes, because it does sound like, even though it is back, I get that. Anybody that's had any sort of back problems, it's tough. I was on ESPN 105.1 The Zone today with G, who's going through some terrible back issues. So at no matter what age, it all sucks. But it sounds like he is in a really good spot. And we all remember how much easier it was to heal at 22 to 23 years old. Just a way easier process. Also from Joey, nice bourbon cabinet, Blake.
Yeah. Got my collection back here. So.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Trey Wynn, I don't think it was quite 4.2, but it was low 4.3s. So your boy can burn. Your boy has great closing speed. And if it's anything like my defense on Madden, you got to have great closers, or otherwise you're going to get burned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then we look at round number 2. You know, everybody, you know, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we go offensive tackle with Dylan Raduns out of North Dakota State. So smaller school, you know, FCS instead of it being a top tier Division I school. But you look at what the guy does, what he brings to the table. He's an immediate favorite to start at right tackle. I mean, with the loss of Kelly and with the current rotation we have, you know, he's an immediate threat to come in and start at right tackle. Now, a lot of people will point out that he started at left tackle in college, which is true. But some scouts seem to think that he's so athletic that he could actually transition to guard if he needed to be. The thing that's most exciting when you look at his tape, he is a great run blocker. He is that mauling type that is just going to tear him up, and that's going to pair very well with our rushing attack with Derrick Henry. He played the full season in 2019 and then just one game in 2020. But important to note, he covered the blind side, did not allow one sack in the entire 2019 season and the one game in 2020. So a great addition, somebody that we can plug and play and rotate into that position.
That's exactly what they need to. They need versatility on that line. I know it seems like the first four are really, really talented, and I get that. But we've seen it year in, year out. Somebody always gets hurt. Sadly enough, multiple people have been hurt at one time. So we need all the depth we can get. I'm with you. I love the Mauler mentality. Sounds like he's a perfect fit personality-wise also, which is huge. All the busing with the boys talk. And
he's a big Taylor Lewan fan.
Big Taylor. I was listening. Did you watch the podcast today by chance? Or
I did not. I didn't have a chance today.
Well, they talked about it, you know, because when J-Rob makes that call and he looks over, he stumbles because, you know, he can sense he's about to light up Lewan. He's looking over on the camera. He sees that camera. He's like, "Oh, don't you be think about getting on that bus with the boys," or whatever he said. So he stumbled, but he wanted to light Lewan up. It was good stuff.
Funny stuff.
Yeah. I really like the personality coming out in Vrabel and J-Rob during the draft. Seeing those calls, they were pumped up, they were fired up, the fist bumps, all that stuff. That's what you want to see, baby.
Yep.
I will say, I want to ask you this, because I like the second round area. Elijah Moore, fan favorite, drafted very early. Probably would have had to give up a hefty price to the Jets for that pick. But you could have found somebody pretty darn good at 30. I think it was 35 or 38. I can't remember where the Falcons were and where they traded out of. I know we do like Raduns, but do you think they should have traded up instead of doing what they did on day 3 and traded half the picks for a fourth rounder?
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that because as we said leading up to this, the wide receiver class was very deep this year. And there were multiple occasions, not just the first round, not just the second round, where they had plenty of options available. And they went with something else. And that's the biggest problem I have with this draft is that third round. I don't have a problem with them moving up in round 3 because I was 100% convinced when they traded up on round 3 that it was wide receiver. It was absolutely going to be wide receiver. It had to be wide receiver. And then they draft Monty Rice, an interior linebacker from Georgia, after trading away all that draft capital. I don't know who they thought they were getting. I have no idea why we went interior linebacker in a position where we had much greater needs that were right there for the taking. Wide receiver, tight end. And what you're looking at is obviously we're not picking up the fifth-year option on Rashaan Evans. This guy could be a possible replacement. But the problem is he's not great in coverage, which is exactly like Rashaan Evans.
Yeah.
He's not a coverage guy. So we pick a possible replacement and he has the same deficiencies. That move, I know a lot of people not going an offensive tackle in the second round and, you know, not going wide receiver really at all. But I feel like that draft pick of the interior linebacker was the biggest reach of the entire draft.
I definitely agree because what they traded to get up to the fourth round for Dez was like, man, you could have probably held off and gotten him because he seemed like he was projected like sixth round, fifth, maybe sixth round. And then you also probably could have just kept Monty Rice at 102. It just seemed like that there was so much going on that they reached on a lot. And I'm with you. I never expected them to to go get Monty that early. And
I realized I completely misspoke there. I was looking at the wrong part of my notes.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I knew what you meant. And shout out to our boy Buck Ali.
Yeah.
He
shout
hopped
out
in there
Buck.
too.
Shout out Buck. My bad.
I knew what you meant. I just was gonna let it ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I really do think,
but it's almost worse. We traded back, and it's a 92, and those options were still there, and you pick up the extra capital and you still go Monty Rice. That's almost worse.
Yeah. Because Monty's somebody, but that seems like that was definitely a Vrabel pick.
Yeah.
He was fired up about that pick. And
he was the only person that was fired up about that pick.
I don't know if they had somebody in mind. That's what I wonder, is if it was like they had somebody there and they didn't go get them, they couldn't work out a deal, or B, they were like, okay, that guy had failed, and there was a big chunk there, taking those wide receivers at third, fourth tierish kind of guy. They were taken pretty quickly, and it's like, okay, Vrabel, this is the guy you really want, go ahead, because it seems like an okay spot, but still thought it was a big reach.
Yeah, it almost came across as a panic pick, like they had a primary plan and a backup plan when they traded back, and all those plans were gone, and they freaked out and said, pick somebody, anybody.
And Des Fitzpatrick, that's our wide receiver. That's the guy you trade 3 picks for. I don't know. And I don't want to take away from tackle. I mean, North Dakota State, I know like that's always the thing, is like, well, it's 1AA.
Yeah.
That game's changed though. I understand that, your competition's not gonna be great, but also there's just things they liked about him. That pro style offense is pretty similar blocking wise to the Titans, from what a lot of people said. So he's going to be fitting right in pretty quickly. So I don't hate that. I'd like he's a taller fella, does need to gain a little bit of weight, it sounds like, but gosh, it's the NFL weight room program, diet program. This guy is going to be just fine on gaining weight. I mean, that's not a problem he's going to have. So I'm excited about that. I mean, Monty Rice, maybe we could be wrong.
I hope we are.
Yeah.
But, even so, I mean, that was pick 92, and that you have pick 100 coming up because you get to double up in the third round. So you think surely wide receiver here. They don't. They go cornerback again with Elijah Molden out of Washington. I honestly did not know much about this guy going into the draft, but looking at his numbers and looking what J-Rob had to say about him, J-Rob called him his best interview in the entire pre-draft process, and God only knows how many interviews they do during this time. Said he came in the door knowing schemes, knowing personnel, really, really smart football guy, and brutally honest. He asked him about school, and he told him he just really did not care for college and school, but he loved to learn when it came to football. He played slot in college. He played a little bit of safety. He was first team Pac-12, first team all Pac-12 his last 2 seasons. He tallied 153 tackles, 25 defended passes, 5 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. At the NFL level, he projects as a nickel, but he could step up and play some safety. That's what he played in the base defense when he played at UW. So very versatile player, looked like a very aggressive player. I think it's another one who is an immediate threat to start, along with the first draft pick, in an area that was easily the most glaring deficiency all of last season.
100%. But the depth is now there. I will say that. Adding those two, Elijah doesn't seem, because it does sound like they've really wanted to try to go bigger and, just prototypical, like, not to use double but prototype cornerbacks nowadays. But I guess you always need that nickel corner. Like you're always going to need that guy, especially with, all these speedsters. I feel like are in the AFC South now. There's always those slot guys, and that's becoming a more viable asset. That's what people want. I mean, you're never going to get Tyreek Hill. You're not going to get him that often, but that's what guys want. You're going to get all these prototypes. You're going to get the, oh wow, Tony out of Florida. Those type of guys are coming out left and right. The kid at Purdue. There's all these studs that are just so versatile, so fast, a little bit smaller. So you're going to have guys that can cover that slot role, and people love to use it. The offenses are faster. We don't know what the heck Jacksonville is going to run. They've got a talented wide receiving core, but they'll probably be a little bit faster. We don't know who's the quarterback in Houston, but you like to imagine if Deshaun does come back, that offensive line's not great, so he's going to need some slot receivers. There's going to be a lot, and we all know that Indianapolis always seems to draft well, pick up well. So I don't know who all they have left right now at wide receiver. I think did T.Y. come back to them?
I think he did resign.
Okay, so
I'm pretty sure. I'm sure the comments will tell us.
If I had to find a guy that I really hate playing, that I always feel like picks on the freaking Titans, it's T.Y. Hilton. He always has his one game. He always has one game. Sadly enough, he reminds me, and I know this is a terrible, terrible comp to people that don't care about the NBA or just don't care about the Atlanta Hawks that much, but I'm going to make it anyways. Carmelo Anthony, I swear, puts up like 35 to 40 points every single time he plays the Atlanta Hawks, and he smiles. Like when he comes in the court, he's like, I've got this team. I don't care who's out there guarding him. I feel like it's the same way with T.Y. Hilton. So that's always very frustrating because you see that guy, it's like, man, I'm probably going to play him in fantasy and I'm going to play him on the field. Terrible day.
Yeah. Looking at the comments, Joey asked, did the Titans wait too long to pick a wide receiver? I mean, they didn't pick one until they took a flyer in the next to last round, and we'll get to that here in a minute. I think the class was deep enough where they had multiple occasions to pick a serviceable option, and they just didn't. Whether that was them thinking that it wasn't a fit for a scheme, or maybe there were issues they had identified that we're not aware of, we'll never know. The team has said that they're still actively in talks with other teams. They wouldn't specify positions. But they said that they had been talking with other teams about filling needs. So, could always add it that way. Joey also asked, was it even possible to make up for the losses on offense with what was available in this draft? I think so. I think it was a very deep offensive class. Plenty of options available. Just felt like, and I agree with them. The defense was the larger problem. So if your defense is able to hold teams in check, maybe you don't have to score 35 or 40 points a game. Maybe you can get away with scoring, 17 points and 21 points and actually winning a football game. Buck, going back to Ray Dunst, didn't allow a sack in his college career. It's awesome. I hope the streak continues. That's going to be great. Joey, will the moves on defense make up for the losses on offense? It's a balance. So. It's a balance for sure. Although I am very excited about wholesale changes. If we ran the same crew out there, or if we made just like one or two changes. So like, let's say we didn't go offensive tackle. All you've done otherwise in the offseason is get Ty Sambrailo, and you sign Kendall Lamb, who is basically a career backup from Cleveland. That's not going to get the job done. It's going to bolster your rotation, but it's not going to give you that elite offensive line to basically protect your quarterback and keep him healthy, as well as open up those holes for King Henry. And Mark does confirm 1 year for T.Y., $8 million on that move. So
got that
great.
Right, though. Cool.
Really cool.
Yeah, I will say the defense obviously was what was needed. Mm-hmm. And with the news of Richard not being re-signed for the 5th-year option, that does make the Monty Rice pick a little bit better, a little bit to me, because it does give you a chance if Evans is not the guy, which clearly they don't think so yet. You got a year to prove it. You got a year to prove this staff wrong. But if he's not the guy, maybe Monty is. Maybe Monty's the next guy. And it also gives you the option to spend a little bit more money on Mr. Jayon Brown if he winds up being everything we kind of hope for, and you have seen flashes of us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dear.
Mr. Hugh Gray. That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
Get this man in Nashville for the pharmacy, baby.
Team pharmacy.
Team pharmacy.
That sounds like that would open the door to so many problems.
So many problems. Gosh, you are an investigation waiting to happen.
I would have to come in on day one and say, fellas, it's all over the counters, not under the counters.
Yes.
Tylenol and Advil only. Maybe the occasional steroid shot.
But there's always a price. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a
Mhm.
price.
So now we get to the part of the draft that everybody wants to talk about, and that's round 4. So
Yep.
at 135, the Titans draft defensive end Rashad Weaver out of Pittsburgh. Now let's talk about the good first, because everybody is ready to talk about the not so good. First team AP All-American, all ACC honors. He was 8th in FBS with 14 and a half tackles for loss, including 7.5 sacks among 35 stops and 9 starts. He forced 3 fumbles. You know, a lot of good things. He's a great bookend type to come around and play defensive end, give us that pressure we've been looking for, but already have character concerns. Controversy is already showing up with the simple assault charge that he's facing up there. That was literally filed 1 day before the draft. I know the timing is very sketchy. I'm the first to admit it. The incident in question happened a couple of weeks before this with the person that he allegedly punched outside of a bar in the area. The person allegedly went to a hospital a few days later, you know, with nausea, vomiting, and was diagnosed with a concussion, head injury. They said that the injury was not consistent with a punch to the face, but they said that the person could have been thrown down. Now, this may be legit, this may not be, but here's what I don't like about the situation. In the police report, Rashad Weaver is quoted as saying to the police officers on site that he had no problem hitting a woman if they needed it. That concerns me greatly. Because yes, it may be a setup. Yes, it may be somebody trying to cash in on a new NFL draftee, but you cannot put yourself. When did this happen? What, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning? Nothing good happens after midnight, folks. I don't know how many times this has to happen before people get it through their heads, but you will throw away your career. You will ruin yourself by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, even if you're not directly involved. So he's put himself in a position to have this come up literally as he signed. And making statements like that give me cause for really big concern.
Yeah. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I don't condone this at all. But in today's world, in today's media, you're not coming back where I feel like you could wind up being in a place where you could make an eventual comeback and halfway sweep it under the rug with certain statements, certain actions, you know, even 5 years ago. But with social media, man, that guy's going to get lit on fire if they sign him. If everything, because these are all allegations. We don't know.
Yeah.
They did say that it sounds like that they took away the punch aspect of it, and it's more of they said something about a choke.
They called it simple assault, which is
a choke,
you know,
a push down. You know, she does have scrapes on the knee. Does everything kind of comes with a fall. She was pregnant. She is pregnant. So there's it's just a lot of not goods.
A lot to unpack.
All alleged. We don't know. You don't want to call this guy. I just wasn't a fan. And the main reason was the exact same thing you said. It's just a comment. When you make that comment, gosh, man, that's a fake tough guy thing to say. That's a marker for, hey, I pretty much did this. So
even if you're clear, that is going to follow him for a very long time. You cannot have that mentality and expect to not have backlash.
Yeah. Mark says when it comes to off-field incidents, it's somewhere in between Jeff Simmons and Panda. Maybe. I think that it's kind of it's on its own right if this does wind up being true. I hope it's not. But, you know, there's just a lot of things pointing to something happened. There's always something in it's always usually it's usually somewhere in the middle, somewhere in that gray area. So
Joey raises a good point there. The inability to meet with prospects in person could be a liability. That's absolutely true. In this COVID world that we live in now, you know, Zooms and, you know, phone interviews and stuff like that, you can only pick up so much. You would think you'd be able to glean the same amount of information, but I mean, I suppose there are other things as far as like being able to, you know, look somebody in the eye and like watch their body language as they're giving you an answer. And I think the interesting thing, and I don't want to jump too far ahead because we'll get into this in a minute, is there was at least one other NFL team that was aware of this incident on draft night. And we were not one of them because the team statement said as such. So and we'll get into it. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think that's a great point that it could be a liability not being able to meet with these prospects in person.
100%. And also, people have to understand it's almost dicey how far deep NFL teams can go into investigations. I mean, you can check whatever you want. They have so much ground, and it's more than just background checks. There's a lot more. They have private investigators. They have, I mean, think about it. It's the highest paying super billion-dollar company that is the NFL. These guys, they're making so much money. It's worth so much money. They've got resources we can't imagine. We all know that. You've heard it for many years. I mean, from players to even GMs, they're like, hey, we've got resources out the butt. I mean, it's incredible. So that's one of those things when you're a week out and you don't know. Questionable on the front office. Questionable because we both talked about that. Very questionable.
Yeah. I know the charges were filed like the day before, but still there were other teams
24 hours.
There were other teams that knew, and it wasn't public record. So it wasn't a matter of doing a Google search or looking for a police report because it comes down to process, and we'll get to that. But of course, we didn't have a pick in the 5th round. Had 2 in the 6th to round it out. First at 205, you go Racey McMath, wide receiver out of LSU. He's known mainly for his speed. Everybody was talking about he could be one of the fastest people in the entire draft, but he's known for his speed above his production because he was in a very, very crowded wide receiver core at LSU. No shortage of wide receivers at LSU.
And been a huge fall off for them this year, in quarterback.
Right. So he's probably an amazing prospect when it comes for somebody as a return guy, because that's an area that has been a big need for the Titans for quite some time. And we've tried plugging Adoree Jackson in there. We've tried plugging others in there, and we haven't had a decent, consistent return guy since, and I hate to invoke the name, Pac-Man Jones.
Yep.
Really, he was the last real threat. I know Mariani had some good moments here and there. But, I mean, when you talk about Racey McMath, you're not looking at him as a legitimate, this is our wide receiver. You're looking at this as a speed guy, special teams, return game. In the fantasy football world, it would be taking a flyer in a late round, because in the late rounds, all the big name players are gone, and you look at who's left, and it's basically a lottery ticket. So you're not going to be raked over the coals if the guy doesn't work out. But if you're the one who is in the 6th round and drafts Tom Brady, for example, it ends up looking really good down the road. So it remains to be seen. And then the other pick in round 6, number 215, you got Brady Breeze, a safety out of Oregon, mainly a backup at safety, if we're honest. He's known mainly for his, special teams play. He was a first-team All Pac-12 special teamer, 4-game starter as a junior. He had 62 tackles, 2 interceptions, 3 breakups, and 4 fumble recoveries in 14 games. So decent. I think the most interesting thing about him is that he managed to score 3 defensive touchdowns in the same year, which actually tied for most in the country. And he was actually the defensive MVP of the Rose Bowl. So brought some accolades to the table, to have it available in round 6. So
yeah, you can tell. It's funny, you can tell even by the stats. The guy's a gambler. So that you never know. He comes out there, multi-back sets, could wind up for something. So those are the guys you also need on this team. And also another spot where we could use some depth, because as of last year, it didn't look wonderful back there. So always could use that depth. Hopefully everything changes.
I do want to address Nicole's comment there about that they didn't know. They didn't know equals they turned a blind eye. In most situations, I would say yes, based on history. But the Titans got so burned last year with Isaiah Wilson, and what an unmitigated disaster he was, starting just 3 or 4 snaps the whole season that were kneel downs at the end of the game, and arrest after citation, after auto accident, after DUI, after thing after thing after thing. This year, I would think legitimately there was no way they were going to ignore an issue that they knew about. I just think that their process failed them. And I don't know if you can chalk that up to COVID process. I don't know if you chalk that up to not being able to meet those players in person. But I really don't think this is a case. And this is not me being a homer for the Titans. I will call them out. Watch this podcast. I will absolutely call them out when I feel the need to. But I think it was legitimately a thing where they just either didn't do their research, which I don't think. I just think that they failed to ask the right questions.
100%. Well, let's get out of there. Who do you see playing significant time in this year's draft class this season?
I would say most of them.
Yeah.
Except for those late round picks. I think Caleb Farley, we're looking at Ray Duns, Farley, I think could immediately start, depending on how organized team activities go and how quickly they mesh. Molden can even be in the mix. Not because they're necessarily ready to start, but because the starters we had last year were an absolute dumpster fire. And most of them are either not there anymore or definitely not going to be allowed to see the field in a starting capacity. Those are the ones that I would say. I would say Farley and Ray Duns probably almost immediately, with Molden hopefully getting into the mix very soon after.
Yeah, I think it's as fitted. I'm going to agree with you. Those two are probably going to be day one starters.
Mm-hmm.
Those two will be day one starters. I think Rice and Molden both are going to be rotational guys, but both are going to see pretty significant playing time. I don't know a snap count or anything like that I think, but I do see both of them getting pretty good playing time early. Some of the other guys, maybe Dez Fitzpatrick, also another one that could wind up getting playing time because of what they gave up. To be honest, sometimes that works for you. I know he had a really, really good Senior Bowl or Senior Day, whatever you want to call that nowadays, because it wound up being a senior week. And that's where a lot of his clout came from. That's where he stepped up. That's where he made some money this week. He is like somebody similar I was just talking about today on the radio sounds like that's what Josh Palmer did as well for Senior Day. Those guys really came out, or the Senior Bowl, they really came out and proved themselves as guys that really moved up the wide receiver list. Dez was not rated very high before that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what scares a lot of people is just things that he's missed out on. Not a huge fella. He's only 6'1". But hey, they've done their evaluations. Sounds like he really, really stepped up and got better after the season. He's not had the best quarterback play at Louisville this last year. Maybe he went from Lamar to don't even know the guy's name.
Right.
But he's somebody that sounds like he's going to get to play. And that just may be due to lack of depth that we already have at the wide receiver spot,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, what was the guy that we signed this week?
Oh, I forget his name.
Is he a Brown?
Shows how much. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I heard the joke. It was like you pass on Monty Brown and all these other guys, but this is the guy you go out and get. Anyways, so yeah, you're going to see that, and I agree with you. You might see some spots where all the late round guys get playing time, but it may not be significant. I don't know. I think if I was going to pick another one, I would say Dez will be the guy that gets the most of anybody, not in the first two.
And I don't know how I managed to skip over Dez in my notes, but the big thing with Dez is that he had the drop off with the loss of Lamar Jackson. I mean, who wouldn't? Of course. You got a redshirt freshman. He starts 8 of 13 games and, catches nearly 700 yards worth of passes and 9 TDs from Lamar Jackson. And then Jackson leaves and his numbers drop, just 3 touchdowns in 12 games. You can't penalize Dez for that. I mean,
no.
The drop off from a Heisman Trophy winner to a not Heisman Trophy winner, we'll just say, is pretty big. So, I mean, I think Dez can make an impact because you've got to have a serious secondary threat because otherwise all that teams are going to do is stack the box and double AJ. That's it. That's what you're going to have to do. So, if they don't feel like Dez is the guy, and we'll get into this in a minute, you may have to target somebody through a trade and, have that better threat out there on the field while you get that other player ready. One undrafted free agent I wanted to mention is Miller Forrestall out of Alabama, tight end. Obviously not going to come in and start or anything like that, but he's getting a shot, which is all he can really ask for. As a Bama fan, I can say that he had really become a larger part of that offense over time. Production went up, each year he was there, and he averaged over 10 yards a catch for his career. So he was the guy that you would go to on the long yardage situations, on those third down conversions, with really good hands, really good technique, and he was a good run blocker also. So remains to be seen if he'll make the final cuts, but guy has a chance, so might be worth watching.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see what Reynolds winds up being as our number 2. I know he was in a crowded spot in LA. He was behind Cup and I'm blanking. Their other good wide receiver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah.
We all know who he is. Yeah, because they're always like right next to each other in your fantasy drafts. But both are very good. And Jared Goff loved those two. And whatever tight end he wanted to throw to that game. Those guys, that offense was very specific. Reynolds had a really good, did well when he could, when he got opportunities. But it does sound like the Titans do like him as the number 2. So hopefully that's a good pickup by this Titans team. And maybe it winds up being something similar to like how Rashard Matthews was for Tennessee. Maybe not the same player, but I'm just saying as far as goes from being like a random number 3 guy to a legit like starting wide receiver. Had a really good year for the Titans whenever he played. We'll see how much that can go. This is a good question by Joey. Let's go off this little tree here. How much longer can Henry continue to play at a high level he's played to at this point?
That's a really difficult question to answer because I don't know that we've ever seen a running back like Derrick Henry. Normally, it's really difficult to stack up seasons the way he has stacked them up. To go from last year, a couple seasons ago, being the league leading rusher and getting it in the final game of the season, versus last year topping 2,000 yards and being a serious MVP contender. If he cannot keep up the pace, it won't be because of his physical conditioning. It won't be because of his off-field routine, because the dude is a beast. It's amazing to see the workout videos that he puts up.
Great.
And not just the ones that you see that are, going viral that you see on social media. The guy, it's not a show. The guy does this all the time and is in peak physical condition. The guy, it's an interesting thing to debate. I hope he can continue doing it forever. What season are we in now? Like, we've got to be getting close to.
This is his 5th, right?
Yeah, close to it.
This will be his 5th, I think, which is amazing because, you spend your first 2 years kind of behind DeMarco. And you know what DeMarco was that first year? I know that offense was so heavy, so run heavy, but Henry just bought his time and everybody started to see that second year. It's like, this is his time.
And it just goes to show the difference. DeMarco had that one really good season and we're like, all right, this is the guy. And then suddenly he wasn't.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I don't know if you're going to keep this up. I really see at this level, maybe 2 years, maybe longer. He, like you said, he is a freak of nature, but also I just do think the process comes from if any of these other running backs work out or halfway decent, like let's say Darrington Evans comes out and plays better. If he winds up being the 3-down kind of guy that people hope he can be, the evolution of the offense, it's going to be one of those things that you're always going to look for cheaper. If you're, even if it's 90% or 80% of what you're getting out of Henry, if he's 80% cheaper, you're going to take that. I hate to say that, but it's just the truth, the business in the NFL. And it's also just really hard, really tough for running backs. But I really think at this, like almost MVP level, I really legit think at least 2 years because he's that kind of freak. And I know 2 years doesn't sound that long. You're talking, now with the 17th game, an average of probably 18, maybe 19 games, if plus playoffs. You're looking at 17 plus playoffs and you're probably getting 1 or 2 games with the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I don't know. He's signed for 2 more years right now. I think. Yeah. 2 more years here. 2 more years, buddy.
So now that we've gotten through the draft, let's talk about trade targets. So obviously we haven't, we don't have that true number 2 threat besides AJ Brown. And then you haven't done anything to address the loss of Jonnu Smith. So looking at who's out there, there are names that are being thrown around, and the most common ones you're hearing are really 3 that I keep seeing. One of them is OJ Howard, Alabama guy, coming off an Achilles injury. He's played, this was his last year, was his 4th season in the league. He's been good, not great. Definitely not what we thought he would be, especially for where he was drafted.
No.
But last year, that Achilles injury is going to be really telling to see if they want to bring him back. Off of that injury, is he going to still have that explosiveness? Is he still going to be able to run those routes as sharply as he was before? Do they feel like it's worth the investment of time and money? The other option is another 4-year player, David Njoku, another Cleveland Brown, which wouldn't be terribly surprising because that seems to be the trend for us to take players from that conference. And then the third name that's mentioned a lot is Zach Ertz. Now, we know for a fact that Zach Ertz is on the trading block. The Eagles have made no secret of that. But the information seems to indicate that they're wanting a really high price for him, whether that be draft capital, whether that be money in return. That seems to be the thing holding that up. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him move. Is he the one that the Titans ultimately go with? Who knows? I don't think he'd be a bad choice. Guy's huge. Big target, really good hands, really consistent in his performance. So.
I mean, you're talking about, 2 years ago, last year it seemed like Goddard was the guy, but 2 years ago, Zach Ertz was in that Kittle, Kelsey conversation. Maybe even better. Honestly, stats were really close. He had production at, more than you could imagine. Like, that guy was fantastic if you ever had him on. I know it's relating back to fantasy, but fantasy. That guy was fantastic. He was awesome. He puts up numbers. He had some competition, and with Carson, he and Carson Wentz had a really good connection. A little bit older than Njoku. Definitely older than OJ. So you're getting, it's one of those things like you've got those 3 tiers. You've got Ertz, who can be very productive, but limited years. A slight downfall could probably be happening. Njoku, middle ground, gigantic man. Just a gigantic man who is super, super athletic, has produced. And then you have OJ, who's yet to really produce, but has that just insane upside. If somebody, if anybody can figure out how to use him, it's this Titans team, man. And if you could find a way to tap into what they thought OJ's potential could be, watch out. Fantastic play. If he comes out and is, honestly, if he's 80 to 85% of what people thought he was going to be, that's a legit tight end number 1. And I know you as a Bama boy know that.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So of those 3, who would you want?
Gosh. Of the 3, it's the upside. It seems like I know who the Titans would probably go after. The Titans have a repeated history of let's go for the guy with the huge upside with the injury concerns. So I feel like OJ Howard would be the most likely person they would go after.
Yep.
Honestly, I would lean a little towards Ertz myself, maybe a slight edge to Ertz over Howard. But that's just how I'm kind of feeling in the moment right now. I just there were so many years, so many seasons that Ertz, in fantasy football, of course, you would take Gronkowski would be the first one to go, but not long after that would be Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
Almost every time. And just such a big target with really good hands. And like you said, if there's a team that can utilize a tight end in their scheme, it's definitely the Titans.
Yeah. I don't know about blocking because
I think OJ Howard brings more on the blocking front, but then it becomes with that coming off the Achilles injury, that explosiveness factor. I mean, I definitely want to kick the tires to see, I would definitely want to have that full physical to see what the doctors have to say about like if there's any, lag time or any after effects from having to have that surgery, because just less than a year ago that happened. So
I know, and that's the thing is, I don't know how you feel, but I do feel like that Achilles injury is the toughest one to come back from nowadays.
Oh, it's so tough.
Unless the only person I can think of right now in any sports, like Kevin Durant, that's the guy that's come back and is just as good as he was. Everybody else,
not so much.
Not so much. And also Kevin Durant was basically gone for 2 years. So
that he was.
There's that. So do you have but Kobe never came back quite the same there, Nicole. He was never as explosive and it was later on in his career. So wasn't quite the same guy. Wasn't quite, and that's just a lot of age anyways. So that was a lot of wear and tear. The timing just wasn't great for Kobe on that one. He did come back. Yeah. He still played, but was never the same guy. At a high level, maybe. I mean, OJ's not that old. So, if you can bide some time and maybe he's, people have made technology nowadays and medical, by God, you just never know. They keep turning the clock on these guys and just cranking it forward as far as injuries. I don't know, man. Good question here. Joey, dude, keep firing away on these bomb questions, dude. Did the Titans draft based off the Jaguars likely taking a franchise QB? Maybe. You can already almost kind of do that, and they may have before with Deshaun. So that's one of those things. I don't know if they really came and did that for them because they're still the Jags.
Yeah,
true. I'll be honest.
I mean, honestly, we knew before the Jaguars had locked up the number 1 pick that the biggest need to address was going to be the Titans defense. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they deviated from that based on, the Jaguars ending up getting the quarterback that everybody was after. I don't think they did, because I think that we all saw that it was going to be a huge problem. And I know Joey asked earlier, will the defense be better or worse? I think that's the biggest softball question, because they couldn't be worse last year unless they came out on the field literally on fire. On fire. It's just one of those things. So I know we talked trade targets on tight end. Wide receivers, the other part we talked about. Do we know any big wide name receivers that might be on the move? I feel like that there might be one out there whose name
is there a guy maybe like in Atlanta?
Maybe.
Julio Jones.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. That guy. We're talking about so many Alabama players on this podcast.
Oh my gosh. Shut up, dude.
I love it.
Shut up. It's just disgusting. You guys are a factory of freakazoids down there. Look who we talk about. Just think about that. I mean, not only are you have the Devontae Smiths, those guys are just freakishly athletic, but look at what you have. 2 guys, I don't know what factor they came from, the same one that Jack's character out of Mortal Kombat's coming from, and Julio and Derrick Henry. Dear Jesus, man, look at those 2 human beings, and then you're like, we're not the same. We're just not the same. I mean, come on. Those guys are incredible. But Julio needs some restructuring, needs some, need to make some trades, and are you willing to take the cap hit? That's the big thing for him. I know we talked about it last week. Are you still on the same trade, I guess, as you were last week?
Well, I mean, going into last week, we were certain that they were going to try to target a wide receiver 1 prospect. We didn't know if that person would work out or not. Mm-hmm. Of course, they drafted Dez, but I wouldn't consider him to be among the biggest names that we were all thinking. We were all thinking Elijah Moore. We were all thinking, these other players. He was not a name that was even on the radar at this point. We jokingly said last week that we would know by the weekend if it was a possibility based on the picks in the first 2 rounds. So going off of that, like we said, nothing would happen until after the beginning of June. So we've literally got three and a half weeks right now until the beginning of June. We did pick up that extra draft pick for next year.
Mm-hmm.
There is more capital out there. Atlanta, going into the draft, did not have enough capital available to even sign their draft class. So they're going to have to part ways with some people, and they're going to have to restructure, and they're going to have to make some really difficult decisions going forward because we're very close to full rebuild time in Atlanta. I think somebody's going to try to make a move. Is it going to be us? I don't know, man. It's been a while since. I mean, can you think of a time that the Titans went out and made a big offensive splash by signing a big offensive player? I mean, DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, but that was such a weird steal.
Yeah.
Remember that was just like a 6th-round pick and a cap hit.
I mean, Tannehill, and that was another weird.
Tannehill was the signing, but everybody was like, he's a backup. It's competition.
The best part of that was the first year he played, like the Dolphins were essentially paying his salary.
That was fantastic. Honestly, I remember me, you, and Trey just talking about how much of a steal that was financially, and that was the big season for Tennessee. No, it wasn't the AFC South season. That was the AFC Championship season. What? No, it was the next. Yeah. So, man, it shows you how much the financials really mean in this league.
Gosh,
to open up that
season, I was watching. I went down a YouTube rabbit hole the other day and got all in my feelings about that season, about making it to the playoffs, and about going to New England and being given no chance at all.
Ending the Tom Brady era.
We ended the Tom Brady era, and for one night, the entire country were Titans fans because of what happened.
1,000%.
And it was amazing. And I had my phone blowing up with people I hadn't talked to in months, if not years, who knew I was going to be losing my mind at what was happening. And then to be told, oh yeah, but you're going to face the number 1 seed in Baltimore. You're not going to be able to do that either. And then we did. But I mean, you get up in your field, and I don't know, somebody in the chat, if you're a Titans fan, some Titans fan listening to this on some corner of the world has to listen to this. Does anybody remember the open they did for the AFC Championship game? And I don't know if you watched it at a bar, you may not have seen this, but they did this open. YouTube it. It's on there. Google search, YouTube search Titans Chiefs AFC Championship open. And it's like this 4 or 5 minute thing where they're talking to the people of Nashville, like these bar owners and restaurant owners, talking about how much it would mean if their team could make it to the Super Bowl in both cities. And I'm not ashamed to admit, by the time the game kicked off, I was a crying mess. It was so well put together that it just really fired you up for the game. So if you're a Titans fan, please search for that later.
Yeah. I'm gonna go look at that. I don't think I've seen that.
I will tweet that out so that everybody can see it.
Yeah. Quick side note. Also, speaking of tears, this year's draft. I know. Last year, I understand the stories. It was very sad, but man, last year was really tough to watch the draft, and this year was a lot of really good stories. And I understand Caleb Farley. His sad story really sold me. I was like, I want this guy on my team. I want him now. The deal with his mom, please go look that up. I think the Titans even put out a really good minute-long video on that. So that was fantastic to watch. But also most of the stories were, kind of good feels. And that's really needed. I thought they did a great job with the draft this year. They
did. Better than most years.
Fans being back, even with masks on, it was great. Shout out to our boy Ballin Ali being the representative for the Titans. Dude, huge. Love that guy. Such a good dude, and hell of a guy to represent Nashville for us too. That man loves his Titans. He's been on this pod a couple times. So Ballin Ali, shout out to you if you ever listen to this, bud. So had some good representatives. Just a fun year in the draft. You want to
shout out to Titans Macho Man too.
Yes.
That we had the imposter Macho Man on the stage for, who was it? Was it the Bengals?
It was the Bengals.
And he's up there, and I couldn't tweet fast enough. I was like, I need Macho Man Todd on that stage, sneaking up behind them right now with a chair to take out both the imposter Macho Man and the commissioner right now.
Right now.
And Todd was all over that. Todd was like, I'm taking that belt.
Yep. Real quick, I think our boy Hugh, where'd he go? I think he asked one. Real quick, let's answer this. Thoughts on Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay or going somewhere else?
You know, when the story first came out, I thought there was no chance he would come back. And then I don't know if you've seen it today, but Adam Schefter had an interview on Dan Patrick's radio show and basically revealed that even though that story broke on the day of the NFL draft, it wasn't a sudden news item. It was what he referred to as an accumulation of information that came out starting at the end of the NFC Championship game that continued all the way on to when he decided to break the story for the NFL draft. So it wasn't a sudden snap decision. It's been building for a while. And basically said he had no sources other than what he heard directly from Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds like he is legitimately really unhappy there. If you go back and listen, and he pointed this out, if you go back and listen to Aaron Rodgers' post-game presser after the conference championship game, it sounded like he was saying goodbye to Green Bay at that moment.
Yeah.
And I think the understanding is that he wanted to be traded and then that was going to happen. And then the team suddenly decided not to, which puts us where we are now.
Exactly.
With the animosity. One of the funniest things I think I've seen out of this is somebody said that it would be the funniest thing ever because of the quote on draft night when the 49ers passed him over. I don't know if you saw this clip. They interview him the night of the NFL draft and they ask him how he feels about his home team, San Francisco, passing over on drafting him. And he says that he's not as sad as the 49ers will be once they realize they should have drafted him. So the funniest thing ever would be if they traded him to San Francisco and then he immediately retired.
That'd be fantastic.
That'd
be fantastic.
That'd be the best thing ever.
What karma.
Oh,
there's so many little things like that I wished would happen just for the story. I mean, it'd be so good. I don't know. I mean, I think it sounds like even from teammates, signings, there's implications that seem like he's going to be back in Green Bay. He may be unhappy, but they did some things. They added the corners. You know, they got Amari Rodgers.
Got a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Should have done that last year.
I don't know how much. Like, Amari's another one where I'm like, I don't know if people loved him or hated him. Some people, it seemed like, you know, Green Bay liked him enough. So I don't know. Amari's one of those that he could wind up being very good. Comes out of Clemson. He's a stud. He was a stud in college. So good for them. But, yeah, man.
And I was talking to Ianello about this. After the draft pick of the wide receiver, I was like, should have done that last year. And he said the problem wasn't that they didn't take a wide receiver last year, it's that they drafted a quarterback in round one. They literally could have drafted any other position in round one, and it wouldn't have caused the drama that it caused.
Yeah, true. And it sounds like there was somebody they were going to. I can't remember. I heard this today. Our boy Greg from ESPN 105.1. He's a huge Packers fan. That dude's been getting ripped ever since that. So it's all he's talked about. But it sounds like that there was a wide receiver they were wanting to take, and it literally happened right before their pick, and so that's why they took a quarterback. They're just like, oh, you know. And it sounds like that they've had plans. This is, it sounds like this has been an unhappy relationship since the beginning. I don't know. It sounds like they're just staying with each other because they've got a good thing going, and Green Bay in itself loves both of them, and it's just their kid or something. I don't know. They're staying together to stay together, but we'll see.
I just have the feeling. My gut feeling is that he's back.
Me too. It's going to be some dramatic story, and you can't tell me that them drafting Love didn't piss him off and cause him to be a little bit better this year. I know that sounds terrible, and you don't want to waste a first-round pick on that, but it's the real deal, man. It's the way it you can tell by the looks. There's optics. There's the eye test. The way he spoke. Looks like it worked out for him. Kind of.
I mean, looking at it from the angle we're in now, like having that quarterback drafted and then being like, okay, and he goes out and has an MVP season and then is like, I'm out. This is what you're giving up. And then the fact that they basically said, okay, we'll trade you, and then suddenly didn't. Yeah, it's It won't end well. I just don't think it'll end next season. I think he's still there for at least one more.
Can we blame Erica? Can we blame Aaron on the Danica effect? Maybe. Maybe. Don't hate that, Nicole.
Yeah.
Don't hate that theory. Oh, well.
Great.
Anything else you need, buddy?
Well, front office. I mean, what do you give the? I mean, overall, I give the draft a solid. I would say about a B. I say B. Not amazing with every single pick, but I think that they addressed a lot of positions of need, even though one of those wasn't tight end or wide receiver. I think you went and got some prospects that kind of flew under the radar, so I give them a solid B on the grade.
I'm gonna go a little bit lower. I think it's B-. I think there's too many times that they didn't go up and get a pass catcher of need. It was a really, really good class,
mm-hmm.
and they went up. Well, they did go up and get a wide receiver that just seemed like a pretty bad value. I didn't love that. Don't love the Rice pick where it was. I like it for what it was. I just didn't like when they got him. I think you could even got that with your second one after that. B- because, like you said, you filled positions. I think Caleb Farley's going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be really good. I think you've got your starting right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Knock on wood, he's your starting right tackle, and you're not going to have an incident like you had to fill that need after last year's Isaiah Wilson debacle. I think that it wound up being good on the front half for 2 or 3 picks. But there was some reaches. There was nobody. You're not going to go get anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Thought they just shot their shot. They didn't really shoot their shot early, and they tried to go get Dez way too early. I don't know. I didn't love the back half. I didn't love the second and third day that much. So,
and I will say these grades are subject to change after the beginning of June.
Oh no, yeah, 1,000%.
If they go out and make a splash signing at wide receiver or tight end.
Yeah, because this does that. Like I said last week. Like I said last week, if they don't go get somebody at 1 and 2, the Julio Jones effect is in play, and I wouldn't hate it.
No, not at all. So talking about front office, you kind of alluded to this. So especially with the character issues with our 4th round draft pick this year, it kind of raises the question again about the front office, their methods, kind of prepping for the draft and kind of making those decisions. Now, I'll be the first to say that J-Rob took some pretty big risks in this year's draft, even more so than normal, because you got to think about it. He's coming off his worst draft. Last year was a disaster, not one hit, just awful, top to bottom. No positive way to spin it at all. And so instead of playing it safe and kind of picking some of these sure positions that everybody projected us to get, he kind of went off the board a little bit. Mm-hmm. So he didn't play it safe. He doubled down on his ability to kind of evaluate that talent. Mm-hmm. And it does feel to at least some degree that he's trying to prove himself after last year, because I know that J-Rob takes pride in his draft process and being able to find these prospects and being able to snake some of these players away that end up being better than the ones that are the big names that everybody's looking at. One thing that kind of bothered me was there was I think it was one of the post-draft pressers where they were talking about injury concerns with a couple of the draft picks, with the back surgeries with Farley and everything. And he said, well, I trust my team to evaluate injuries. And, I know that our team can evaluate injuries properly. I'm like, really? This is the same staff that Jadeveon Clowney, told us that Dory Jackson was going to be fine. And then he didn't play the entire regular season and then was awful when he came back. I don't know that I trust our injury assessment. And I know that our conditioning has been really suspect because we have a lot of players that have had these injuries that have been these freak, sometimes non-contact situations. But with all the surprises this season, and this is just me talking, going kind of off script, with all the surprises this year, as far as when players were taken, which players were taking an interior linebacker, some of these moves, this is going to be the draft. All right. Yeah. And when I say the draft, this is either going to be the draft we're going to look back on and say, that was when J-Rob lost it right there. That was the moment that it looked like he wasn't going to be the guy and he was gone a couple of years later. Or it's going to be the draft where he says, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to go against the grain, but I'm going to show you that I'm the guy when it comes to putting a talented team on the field. So you overhaul the defense as well. You should, but this can't be all that's in the plans. So I'm interested to see what the rest of the offseason holds.
Me too. Because the trust value is tough because the last season was just bad overall. There's been times where they've just missed on guys that don't love football. Kevin Dodd, wow, Vic Beasley last year. I mean, I said in a tweet earlier, like it really does feel like J-Rob is the hot girl that's like, oh, I can fix him. It never works.
That is a perfect analogy.
It never works, man. It never works. And I really hope that he can figure it out. And like you said, he did his homework. He goes out and gets the right guys this year. I mean, already it seems like Caleb Farley, just listen to the interview, things that he's gone through, high character guy. You know, we're going to see tweets, all that stuff. You can only tell so much. So hopefully he's done better. But, you know, missing on Richard already. Not great. I don't know. There's sometimes I feel like I can trust some talent evaluation, but then other times I look back and it's like J-Rob's not even had a guy that he's re-signed that he's drafted in the first round yet. He's not even signed a 5th-year extension for any of those guys. CD, Richard Evans. I mean, dude, Jack Conklin, none of them. And those guys went out and got paid on their next contract somewhere else.
They did.
Conklin's doing pretty well up in Cleveland. You know?
That he is.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with Corey Davis. Poor guy. I don't know how it's going to work out in New York. He got his
Big
money.
Guy. Bright lights, man.
Yeah, bright lights, big city, a whole lot of money. And, you know, good-looking cat. New York City, I don't think he's going to have a bad time. He may not love it on the football field, but or in the media because he's going to be doing a lot of losing. I hate to say that, but let's be honest. You know what you're getting in New York right now. So good luck to Corey Davis. But I don't know, man. I love J-Rob for the most part. He's a top 8 to 9 GM in my opinion. But there are miscues. There are miscues and some pretty glaring holes that if Clowney and Beasley would have worked out, you know, that team could have been really something special.
Could be different. Could have been different.
Yeah. So we'll see, man. I will say that there are partial trust things. He's got to stop reaching and being like, I can fix him.
Yeah.
That's it. You can't always take those big swings. Tough.
Sometimes you've got to settle for the the line drive single as opposed to the grand slam.
Yes.
Don't swing for the fences every time.
You sure don't have to. Ozuna, we're looking at you, buddy.
He's been doing better recently, though.
He has been. He
had one heck of a slide earlier. If you didn't see that, he
sure did.
Ended up being the game-winning run. I thought for sure they had him tagged at home plate, but
no. Slide. Our boy, yeah, and then had a really good game last night. That's a very different pod. We'll get on the Braves later on.
We're taking over somebody else's pod now.
Yeah, we got to get those Braves boys back. Speaking of, I'm gonna start that pot. Speaking of, I'm gonna start that pot tomorrow.
One might say you're gonna mix it up.
Wow, you proud of yourself, aren't you?
Very proud.
You're very proud. All right. Shout out to Sprite, not a sponsor.
No free shout outs.
No free shout outs, baby. No free shout outs, babe. All right, dude. Well, I appreciate it. Blake Shoemaker, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Blake the RX Guy.
All right. You can find me at MCGreen423. Shout out to the area code. And you can find us anywhere at Chat 10 Sports, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the same. Tighten Up Talk Pod. Shout out to Hugh Thank you. Appreciate it, Hugh Gray, Beavis and Butthead. I don't know
Who's
Beavis.
who?
I don't know. Hugh, who's who?
Oh, we shouldn't ask him that.
Yeah, it's probably not great. This is not good.
Quick, end the podcast.
Yeah, this is it. Guys, thank you for comments. This was great stuff. This is what we want every single week. So like, subscribe, share, keep commenting. We're going to do this. I'll be honest with you. I like the Thursdays. So it's probably going to be every Thursday.
I'm a fan.
We'll get creative. I know content may or may not die down. You never know. I'll be honest with you. Before I started this, I was like, how are you going to do this every week? But there always seems to be something that comes up. So we'll enjoy it. We'll keep riding that wave. Mr. Shoemaker, I appreciate it, buddy. You have a good night.
As always.
To all you wonderful people, Joey E. Marshall says, let's go Lightning.
Yes.
Okay. All righty.
Well, you know why he's saying that, right?
Oh,
come
yes.
on, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The playoff picture. Yes. Yeah, we need that. We need that right now.
If the Lightning win outright tomorrow night, the Preds are in the playoffs.
That's what we need, baby.
So I'm wearing my Predators gear to work tomorrow at the pharmacy.
I'm gonna go rock my shirt if I can.
Let them try to stop me coming in that clinic with my jersey on.
Yes. Oh, speaking of jerseys, revert back to Atlanta. You boys got one coming in. It was my birthday present to myself. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be a guy that wears his baseball jersey out to a place that he wants to go.
There you go. I have no problem being that guy. I mean, heck, come to our watch parties at Parkway Poorhouse.
Heck yeah, baby. All right, dude. Well, we're out. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you. As always, tighten up.
Tighten up, folks.